Allow me to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Scott Provost.
Just follow along with this, would probably be our best bet. And, you know, Don mentioned that this map is critical to everything. Everything here under that yellow line in between all that land, all that water drains through there that ultimately ends up in tri-lakes here. So everything you do on the land affects your water quality. And let's start out just about every water quality presentation with that water quality starts on the land, not in the lake. Go to the first page there and it says State of the Lakes 2021 and where we're at right now. And you'll see this monitoring picture here to the right. This monitoring has been going on for several years now. It started back in 2014. Anyway, it's provided enough data that we are able to use that in our what we call a total maximum daily load project on the Wisconsin River, and it also provided enough data that we could get some grant money going to develop what they call a 9 key element plan. That's important from the EPA point of view. If you have a 9 key element plan, it's just not a plan that sits on a shelf. You have to implement. You have a 9 key element plan. And that having that 9 key element plan opens you up to grant money. It's under 319 of the Clean Water Act that we can use now to help implement some of these things that are ultimately going to improve water quality. What are those things? Well, we're going to talk about that. And unfortunately, as I gotten older, my eyesight wasn't. I used to brag to my dad I was the only family member with 20/20 vision and had all my hair. Boy, that came back and kicked my butt. So if you look what we've found out so far, if on this page here at the watershed, you'll see these little like blue areas that have been sectioned out. Those are like zones or capture zones that we know now where we call areas of interest. So we knew there was non-point source issue out there in the watershed, right? You didn't know where it was coming from. With all this monitoring now that's gone, we can be able to knock that down and whittle that down so the county can go out and use those 9 key element funds to start working on some land issue, BMPs, best management practices, increase water quality. The other thing we found out with all the sampling that you guys have done and with previous studies is our nitrogen is a big component. You always hear about phosphorus, right? Well, nitrogen is huge in your system. Central Sands has some of the highest nitrogen in groundwater, surface water, any place in the state. And that nitrogen is just like phosphorus when it comes into your lakes. It creates a lot of biomass with aquatic plants. So, yes, phosphorus is important, but nitrogen is like its evil twin that never always seems to sneak by and nobody really pays much attention. In fact, you have so much nitrogen in your system right now in the lakes that but I did some number crunching here. That's what I'm better at than talking. 76% of all the nitrogen coming into the system can be used up by plants and algae immediately. It's called an inorganic form of nitrogen. That's what plants need. 76%, almost over 3/4 of all the nitrogen coming in is already available for plants. So we got to control that nitrogen. We don't have a standard in Wisconsin for nitrogen yet, so there's no way to control what's coming in the water. When we look at 300 micrograms per liter or 0.3 parts per million is enough to sustain algae blooms, you guys are about 10, 12 times higher than that on a continual basis coming through the lakes. So how are we going to fix this? First, the only way you're going to fix this first is decrease the amount of nitrogen that's applied, whether it's your lawns or out there in a farm field or some other place. Commercial fertilizers are made to be taken up by plants right away. So the only way you're going to get rid of this nitrogen is excess nitrogen, quit adding so much. If you're adding nitrogen, it's getting into the system, obviously it's not being used by plants. So We were working with people to lower the amount of nitrogen they put on the lawns. 14 Mile Creek Watershed worked with Town of Rome last year or 2 years ago to revitalize or look at the lawn care ordinance, and just reducing the nitrogen on your applications will go a long way in improving water quality. In fact, they did a bunch of soil tests on the lawns, and what we found out is some of those lawns out there are equivalent to having a 1,000-pound steer grazing and pooping on your yard the whole year. So what I like to do is when you go through if you're on your pontoon taking a cruise, you see all the lawns, nice lawns and stuff coming down to the shore. Nobody thinks about that, but if you were to put a 1,000-pound steer on every one of those lots, that might trip something. That might make you think. But basically, that's the equivalent we're talking about here. So lawn fertilizers is the big one. Even though there's no phosphorus in it, nitrogen is still excess. And there's enough nitrogen in your surface water out there that if you're irrigating with the lake water, there's nitrogen credits in there that you can give yourself, so you don't have to add as much to your yard. Apologize. So we're going to reduce the sources, reduce how much nitrogen is put in. And another activity that Tri-Lakes does very well is they do how they do their aquatic plant management. They harvest the aquatic plants. This is important. If you don't harvest those aquatic plants, obviously they're going to grow, but if you want to control them and you try to use something else other than harvesting, what's going to happen is, like say, use of herbicides, yeah, we'll kill that plant. And we'll open that up for a month or so, or a couple weeks or a month. But then when that plant decays, it releases all those nutrients, and that phosphorus and nitrogen comes back into the system, creating a bigger problem, maybe an algae bloom or something. So you got to be careful how we manage aquatic plants out there, because this is such a nutrient-rich system that any teetering of this can flip the lake to what we call an algae-dominated system. You don't want that. You don't want a whole summer of blue-green algae. So the harvesting actually mines nitrogen and phosphorus out of the lakes that they do. And Tri-Lakes, they run a nutrient analysis once a month on all the plant material that they pull out. And actually, in 1 month, they remove about 2.5 days of total nutrient load coming into the lake. So it is a source, or one way to help reduce the amount of nitrogen and phosphorus out there. Yeah, and Tracy's gonna talk about using and restoring wetlands and how that can help water quality. That's huge, folks. If we can use wetlands to increase water quality, we're gonna be putting more carbon back in the soil where it belongs. We're gonna be the water's gonna get cleaned up. We can actually use those wetlands as a filter or like a bioreactor to convert nitrogen back to nitrogen gas and send it up in the atmosphere where it belongs. We'll talk a little bit about this project that Colton Hutchinson over here, he's been working with me on it, and along with Tri-Lake, 14 Mile Creek Watershed, we got some DNR funding to out there by Owens Rock. There's several hundred acres where it's basically all drained wetlands. We're gonna plug a few ditches, raise that water table, and get that denitrification cycle to kick in at the soil and try to take it out on a larger scale than just somebody's yard or a farm field. If this works, we might be able to employ this on multiple wetland sites out there where some of the agriculture is on organic layers, kind of like the organic layers that are buried around some of the shorelines here in the lake. But in order to do any of this stuff, you got a partner. And I've seen so many of these groups start up and just kind of fizzle because they had a bunch of pumped up, amped up people for a while, and then it kind of fizzled out, or they pointed fingers at people rather than bringing them in. You're not going to fix the water quality problems on Camelot, Sherwood, Arrowhead, Wisconsin River by regulation alone. It doesn't work that way. It never has, it never will. I don't know about you, I drove on my way here today, I'm sure I didn't pay much attention to the speed limit signs sometimes. It's the same thing. You gotta get folks to believe in it, and the only way you're gonna do that is partnering with folks like the growers up in the watershed, as well as the people, the lawn care providers on the shoreline. What we do with our septic system, what we do with our lawns, the grass clipping, everything, that all plays into this budget, of this, what we call a nutrient budget. And it's gonna take all those actors to reduce the amount of nitrogen and phosphorus that's being applied. So, and how you do that is you gotta be willing to partner and identify all these people and work with them. You're gonna meet, you wanna discuss, you wanna formulate new ideas, you wanna talk about what works, what doesn't work, how can somebody do this and still maybe minimize the amount of nitrogen while maximizing their productivity. And then with the things that's already out there right now, such as your 9 key element plan, you're already set, ready to roll on this, folks. So you're already eligible for all kinds of grants, money, because it takes money to do anything. You start doing these things, and actually, 14 Mile Creek Watershed has been doing that already. We met with some of the growers up in the watershed. We met with some of with the Potato Vegetable Growers Association. They're willing partners. And anybody that was on that tour with us a couple weeks ago for Heartlands would just be amazed by the technology they are using to reduce the amount of everything that they put out there. Everything costs money, right? So if you can reduce that, it saves them money. It's good for the resource. And I was just astounded by how far that technology has come. This is not, somebody said it in the 14 Mile Creek Watershed Group, that it's not the red barn type of farming. It exactly is. It's really high tech. So these people are the answer. They're the innovators. They're going to be able to figure out how to get this down and help our water quality over a long run. And the only way we're going to do that is to work with them. That means everybody on the shorelines, out there beyond the shorelines, in the watershed, because water quality starts on the land, right? So, hey, it's starting to rain pretty good. So I'm gonna just, if you look at these, you can see some of the examples of what the 14 Mile Creek Watershed has been doing. And this is how you get things done. I'm not going to go through and read it all because I want to get Tracy to come up, but take a look at some of these examples. This is what a group of people committed to the resource did in such a very short period of time. And I'm just befuddled by how they've come along so fast so far, but they've had a lot of good people playing in this, and they got good partners out there such as Packers, Keeping Castle Rock Stewards. They're working with working with other counties because the watershed is so big. And this is going to be successful, but it's going to take time. Basically, we're going to be planting trees that we'll never sit underneath to get the shade from, but that's all right. Got to start sometime. So the more we can work with the watershed as a group, with everybody, the faster we're going to see results. So I really encourage you all to work with those folks and not point fingers. We'll work together and we'll resolve the issue. I'm going to cut it short because it's going to get bad. Tracy, sorry, bro, you're up next.